Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of Indie Book Review, where today I am reviewing Lost Fables from New Albion by Paul Shapera. Now, full disclosure, I've been a fan of Paul Shapera's work for a very long time. He does rock operas, essentially, based on several styles of genre punk, like steampunk, diesel punk, atom punk, fairy punk, the list goes on. And yeah, I've been a fan of his work for a very long time. So, reading this book, at the very least reviewing the book, I've got to try and be as objective as I possibly can. So, while I as a fan absolutely loved this book, for everything that it is and everything that it has in it, I do have to try and be as objective as possible. So, going forward, any critiques that I have is strictly from a reviewer's perspective and not as a Paul Shapera fan perspective. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, we can move forward. So, Lost Fables of New Albion is a short story collection, and it features a lot of... the stories are based more around the characters that are mentioned throughout the New Albion songs, like from New Albion 1, like the red-haired dwarf, or New Albion 5 with the Tinker on Tin Pan Row, and the cigarette girl. So, yeah. These short stories are very well written. They're written in a sort of way that they're informal, more or less. Like, it's a lot of telling instead of showing, but with the way that the stories are and what they're trying to portray, it kind of works with what the book is trying to show, with what the book is trying to be, in any case. So, while for the most part I would actually give an informal style of writing a fairly negative review, this is the style... because it's short stories, more or less, I'm willing to give it that little bit extra in terms of leniency. I promise it's not because I'm a Paul Shapera fan. This is actually something that I would give short stories leniency regardless. I just don't see a lot of informal styles of writing. So anyway, there are some stories that really stand out in terms of being just a certain level of fantastic. Like Snow Globes, or Pepper the Dog, and the Red-Haired Dwarf, the Battle of Lloyd Allen. Those ones really stand out, and they stuck in my head. Not just because they're well written and they're, good lore, but because they're actual short stories. It's kind of one of the biggest critiques that I have of this book, is that some of the short stories aren't really stories, because nothing really happens in them. Like, I'm going to take The Cigarette Girl, for example. The Cigarette Girl explains who she is, it explains what she's capable of, and it explains the sort of stuff that she's willing to do in order to get the information that she needs, because she's a person who pretty much makes her living off of information, and having a union of spies that go through her. And it's an explanation of her character, and she has a bit of a meeting with Constance, and that's really about it. There's not really much of a story there. And there's a couple of them that are like that. They're just kind of there. And, well, I, as a fan, appreciate what it is. As a reviewer, I have to admit that the stories really just aren't much in the way of stories. There's just not enough there for me to really have any sort of remembrance towards them. If I hadn't recently read it, I probably wouldn't remember what happened in The Cigarette Girl, because not much happened. So, yeah. Whereas something like, as I said, Snow Globes, I remember that one because a lot of stuff happened in it. I don't remember everything, obviously, but I do remember a good chunk of it. I remember how it ended. I remember the reason why things were going the way they were. And I appreciated the lore behind it, and how it expanded more on the Shaperaverse. So, yeah, stuff like that really helped. And then there's Pepper the Dog. That one has a special place for me, because my dog's name is Pepper. And all throughout reading it, I pictured my dog, which, that just made things all the better. And it kind of made that ending just that little bit more beautiful. So, yeah. Now, there's something that I need to mention in terms of this book. And it's the sort of thing that I don't mention when it comes to indie books and self-published books, because I get it. I myself am a self-published author, so I get this. And it's the typos. I don't typically mention typos, but this is something that gets mentioned with this book fairly often. So I feel as if I have to mention it. If anything, just to state that the book is not going to lose points because of the poor editing. That's just really what it comes down to. I'm just not going to knock the book for poor editing, because editing's expensive. And especially for a first-time author, like, he's done a lot of stuff in terms of music, but writing books and short stories is a different beast altogether, and when you don't know, you don't know. So, I do hope Paul has actually, like, takes that information and puts it toward his next book in terms of editing at the very least. I know editing's expensive. I myself can only afford to have an editor go over my books once. So I kind of have to be fairly diligent in terms of editing, despite not being particularly good at editing myself, which is a part of the reason why I don't knock a book for editing. Because, like I said, I get it. I myself am not great at editing, and I can only do so much in terms of funding. So, yeah. The book needed some more edits, but I'm not knocking it for it. It's not losing points. So, there. There's not a whole lot more I'm going to add to this review. It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of some of the short stories just really didn't add much in terms of being stories. They added a bunch to the lore and to the characters. Like, don't get me wrong in that, but it just didn't have much in the way of the characters. Whereas the short story, but there were enough short stories that actually had enough to it and had a story that I was able to latch onto them. I was able to actually, enjoy them as a reviewer, not just as a Paul Shapera fan. So, all in all, I'm going to give The Lost Fables of New Albion a 9 out of 10. Like, it was, I myself was really impressed with it, and I'm trying, and like I said, I'm trying to come at it from an unbiased perspective, and that is probably what I can do. But anyway, that's all I got for you folks. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff that YouTubers are supposed to say. And yeah, have a good one.